to councillors and guest speakers for attending tonight's extraordinary meeting on the 21st of June. I'll move straight into 1.1, which is apologies for leave of absence. We have an apology from Councillor Turner, which is the only apology. Somebody happy to move the apology?
Yeah, I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Munro. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 1.2 is live streaming and recording. Live stream and recorded.
Moved.
Councillor Hamling, seconded by Councillor Munro. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 1.3 is acknowledgement of country. I'll just move down to that area. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land. I would also like to pay respect to elders, both past and present, of the Wiradjuri Nation and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians who are present. Item 1.4 is any declarations of pecuniary interest, significant non-pecuniary interest, less than significant non-pecuniary interests. Are there any of those?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Stephen Nugent, Councillor Nugent here. I just wanted to declare a non-significant non-pecuniary interest as I'm a committee member of Echo Orange, and Echo Orange has made 3 submissions in relation to the budget. So given I consider it non-significant, non-pecuniary, and I will be staying in the chamber for the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Nugent. Councillor Miletto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 1.5 business. I'm the president of the Orange District Football Association, and I'll be declaring a significant non-pecuniary interest in that matter, but we're sitting in on the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Miletto. No further declarations. I'll just run my eye over the screen. There are none. Mr. CEO, would you like to introduce the first speaker, please?
I will. Councillors, could I perhaps ask that we all mute ourselves, and I'll just introduce the speakers. So the first speaker is Mr. Nick King, and I understand Mr. King speaking on a couple of topics. So I'm going to unmute you now, Mr. King. Welcome. You have 5 minutes maximum.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, I'm only speaking on one topic, and that is the funding allocation for the proposal for a mountain bike trail on Mount Canobolas State Conservation Area. In the draft budget, there's $500,000 set aside for consideration for further exploration of the idea of putting a mountain bike trail on Mount Canobolas. So thank you very much for the opportunity to address Council on this item. I'm speaking on behalf of ECHO, and we're voicing our opposition to the inclusion in the 2021 budget of this money, which basically our opposition is also shared by other local environment groups such as the Orangefield Naturalists and Conservation Society, the Central West Environment Council, the Orange Regional Water Security Alliance, the Mount Canobolas Conservation Alliance, and the New South Wales Nature Conservation Council. Our opposition to the proposed project is based on evidence of its environmental and ecological uniqueness and importance, and this evidence has been provided by local environmental experts and is also the results of recent flora and fauna surveys which have been carried out by National Parks and volunteers of the Orangefield Naturalists and Conservation Society members in 2019. So basically, given this evidence and also considering the environmental conditions of consent which are outlined in the Mount Canobolas State Conservation Area Plan of Management, it is quite difficult to see how any submission for a mountain bike track could be successful. To further pursue the idea, we feel could result in an investment of $500,000 of ratepayers' money to develop a proposal which is very much likely to be unsuccessful, which is a lot of money to risk for a fairly uncertain outcome. Also, Orange City Council is proposing to spend $500,000 on a project which is located on a site within the Cabonne local government area and is controlled by National Parks. In effect, it's proposing to invest money on a site which it doesn't own and doesn't control. This appears to be a risky environment in which to invest ratepayers' money. Also, any attempt to pursue this project will be met with fairly vigorous opposition, the result of which could be a drawn-out and expensive process for council, could possibly resulting in an unsuccessful outcome. But basically, if council is concerned about the mountain, the $500,000 could be invested in other ways, such as improving the existing environmental assets through funding programs for the management of invasive weeds and feral animal control. Alternatively, it could be better invested in the proposed extension of the playing fields at Jack Brabham Park, which is a very good idea. And it's a facility that council can control, and they do own, and has the potential through sport to attract visitors to our city. And it's also infrastructure which is not complex, problematic or controversial. We argue that Orange already has 2 well-used and popular mountain bike facilities. If it is necessary to further develop Orange's potential as a major mountain biking destination, perhaps the funds set aside for mountain biking could be redirected towards enhancing the existing facilities or for the exploration of less environmentally controversial sites, such as the state forest that borders Mount Canobolas and actually features in the concept plan. I would suggest that very few business operators would be prepared to risk $500,000 on developing a site they don't own and is controlled by someone else, will involve conditions of consent but will be difficult to meet, has significant environmental constraints, and could be the subject of opposition which could be drawn out and expensive. I very much doubt that business people on Orange City Council would risk their own money on such an enterprise, and I would submit they certainly shouldn't be risking ours. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. King. If you could mute yourself, and you're welcome to stay until Ms. Kinross has spoken. Ms. Kinross, all yours for 5 minutes. Thank you. Your subject, by the way, is Blackmans 2 wetlands, I believe.
That's correct. Yes, my name is Dr. Scilla Kinross. I'm an adjunct lecturer in environmental management at Charles Sturt University. I'm chair of the Summerhill Creek Care, which is a local land care group based downstream of Summa Park Dam, and also the Central West Environment Council, which is an umbrella group for the whole region, environment groups. I'm asking this evening, thank you for letting me speak, I'm asking councillors to vote against the $5 million shown in the budget, $2.5 million of which would come from ratepayers and the rest from a grant, for the following reasons. Firstly, you may, I don't know whether all councillors are aware of this, but the Summerhill Creek Care and various other NGOs were involved in an extended 5 or 6 year battle, if you could call it that, over stage 1 of this project, which ended up in the courts and lots of tensions and so on. And we thought that was the end of it. But then along comes the drought, and now stage 2 is rearing its ugly head. And we have a major concern with that. There's a bit of a myth, I think, that people think that because you've got a city and you've got a lot of paved areas that you have a lot of excess water that nobody wants. And it's true that there is, it changes the dynamics of the flows, and so you get higher runoff periods and so on, but you don't actually create water. There is no more actual water going down eventually into the Macquarie and the Murray-Darling system. It's the same amount of water, just rearranged a bit. Now this creek, this Summerhill Creek, is, according to documents which are well out in the public sphere, is shown to be a extremely highly stressed creek. And the reason it's stressed is primarily from over-extraction already. The stage 2 will exacerbate this situation, and particularly for iconic fauna such as platypus, and also for downstream users such as some of the local businesses, orchards, and so on. That's, I guess, our major concern. I think, as Nick maybe said, it's likely that this project will bring considerable community opposition, Several concerned NGOs, such as our own group, the OFA Trust, ECHO, local environment groups and so on, and various individuals will almost certainly be opposed to the project. And when the stage 1 was going on, the council had to considerably downsize the infrastructure projects and cut down on the extraction rate due to regulations placed on the operating rules and environmental flows required by the regulators, who quite rightly recognised the ecological stresses already present in the creek ecosystem. And those stresses, of course, haven't gone away. They've been exacerbated by the drought. So it's likely that there will be very strong limits put on what the what council is allowed to remove from the creek. That's the way I read it. Now, we all like the idea of the proposed wetlands. I've been on part of the advisory group looking at the design of the wetlands. But I do have concerns, and I don't like to appear too cynical about this, but I do have concerns that this is primarily a PR exercise designed to bring in a lot of people on board, saying this is a wonderful, good, feely thing, lots of green effects with birds and frogs and so on. But then the adverse effects of that could be caused by the increased extraction from the creek are just sort of slithered away. In fact, we know nothing about what actually is proposed at this stage, and that's a major problem. And my feeling is that the wetlands is a worthy project, and it should be funded, but as a separate thing, and it should not be contingent on the approval of the stormwater harvesting. So why not treat it as a separate? Well, this group, the Summerhill Creek Care, is part of the stakeholder reference group, which hasn't met very often, I should add. But we don't appear to have been included in any, at this stage, any design principles or operating rules for the actual extraction. That's a major concern for us. In fact, I didn't know that this was going to be in the budget tonight until I found out by chance at the wetlands meeting this afternoon. So my notes my preparation of my talk tonight is a bit scrappy for that reason. But we feel that the mechanism has not been transparent. We don't know how much is proposed to be extracted. The creek is not a magic pudding. There is only so much water. It's already given up so much water. People don't realise that quite often stormwater is all we get, because there's obviously a dam, Simla Park Dam, and so the environmental flows that we get are very small, much less than we were hoping to get. It's not unlimited.
Dr. Kinross, can I just stop you there? Councillors, that's 5 minutes. Chair, did you want to extend here?
I've got a mover in Councillor Miletto. Do I have a second? Councillor Nugent. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Dr. Kinross, you have 2 more minutes. Thank you.
All I needed to say, thank you for that, is that my feeling is that this creek has nothing more to give. It's been abused and used. It's just, as all the people living on the creek know, it suffers terribly, as do a lot of the creeks within the Murray-Darling Basin system. You can't keep providing water Orange. Orange really needs to think very, very closely about its growth potential and where it's going to get its water from. It can't keep raping and pillaging the local creeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kinross. Chair, your meeting.
Thank you, David. So I'll just bring up my document, just excuse me. So we move on to General Reports 2.1, the adoption of the operations plan for 2020-2021 and the draft budget for 2020-2021, year 3 of the current delivery program. I believe the CEO has sent out correspondence this afternoon that point 5, I believe, on page 13 has been withdrawn. Is that correct, Mr. Waddell?
Yeah, with councillors' indulgence, I would like you to delete item 5 from that recommendation, please. And I explained that in my memo to councillors.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment there? As a matter arising, I think that matter should be left there and let the councillors decide which way, because I want to move an amendment to what the recommendation is that the council accept the the top level of the regional centre for councillors and for the mayor. And I'll speak to it when the time comes.
So, Mr. Duffy, Councillor Duffy, my apologies. So you're moving an amendment. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duffy is asking to leave the matter for discussion. Do I have a seconder to do that?
Yeah, I second it for discussion.
All right, Councillor Munro.
Yes.
Mr. Waddell, although you have requested the removal of this particular point for process, could you advise us? Are we able to, with an amendment, to leave it in the papers?
Yes, you are. So I would now begin a debate on the as printed recommendation, Chair.
Okay, so you're now withdrawing. So, Councillor Duffy, we will. Well, this is a bit bizarre.
Just as a point for clarification, are we going to move them one by one, or are we going to move the lot at once?
Well, it's as printed, so it's certainly up to council how they would like to deal with each aspect of the recommendation.
Chair, may I ask a question, please?
Certainly, Councillor Kidd.
Can we get an explanation for the reasons for the removal?
Certainly. Mr. Waddell?
Happy to give that. Councillors, I got some feedback once we'd included that and spoken to councillors at our briefing on Friday, that councillors felt they didn't have enough time during this process. They needed more briefings on this issue, and that's fair enough. Staff accept that. And questions have also been asked that we feel we need to probably now go to the Office of Local Government. With the extension of the budget by the state, you still have your 30-day period, so this can be done. So I was willing to, suggest to councillors that item 5 be removed. But of course, I'm in your hands now that you've got a printed paper, and council needs to resolve to leave item 5 in there, ignore my request, and that's fine.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Waddell explained to me this afternoon, once he was informed, or as the Chair of Finance, that whilst the item was placed in tonight's paper, it hadn't been previously discussed in all of our budget briefings. We hadn't discussed the decision of the tribunal, and Mr. Waddell felt that because of that fact that a memo had come out from the New South Wales Government Tribunal that indicated what the remuneration should be for councillors based at certain levels, and Orange City Council has now been zoned or levied at a new as a regional centre. That particular tribunal recommendation hadn't been presented to councillors prior to this, but it is in the paper. I will just, based on Councillor Duffy, I won't do the amendment. The CEO has suggested that he will remove the withdrawal, and we'll just deal with the papers as printed. Has anyone got any concerns about that?
I think, Mr. Chair, you'll need to resolve as a majority to do that.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
We'll do that then. So we have an amendment put up by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Munro, that item 0.5 on page 13 be retained in this document for resolution. Is there any discussion before I put the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll just make a comment. My discussion is this is a long-standing thing.
Councillor Duffy, just before you do, Councillor McRae had a hand up first, so I might just let her speak.
On the move of the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, but you've already spoken, so I'll let...
I haven't spoken. But I'll let it go.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor McRae.
I'm happy to yield to Councillor Duffy, but Mr. Chair, I abide by your advice on this one.
All right. Councillor Duffy is technically correct, Councillor McRae. So I shall allow him to speak first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems it's only going to be a vote on whether we put it in there.
Chair, no, a point of order, Chair. If we are going to discuss, and that's going to stay in there, I already indicated to the General Manager last night and today twice that I am declaring a significant pecuniary interest in the item.
Okay.
And will remove myself from the debate and the meeting part, that part of the meeting. I want to make that quite clear.
All right.
Just as a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, I'm quite happy to go through them one by one, so the mayor stays in the room for all the other four.
All righty. Well, look, I think I'm going to resolve the fact that the CEO has already put a document out to remove it, Councillor Duffy. I think out of respect to the CEO and
Mr. Chairman, I have the right as a councillor to move an amendment.
Oh, certainly you do. And I'm
Yes.
going to put that amendment. So would you like to speak, Councillor Duffy? Now, Councillor Kidd has indicated that he's going to declare an interest.
Yes, I'm only speaking on the right to bring it back in. And basically, this is an issue that was brought up at the New South Wales Local Government Conference on a regular basis and highly spoken about at last year's conference, which the Mayor and I believe also Councillor Nugent was at, and was spoken by Mariana Saliba and a number of other councillors that have been in State Parliament with Councillor Turner, and they were very passionate about what they actually spoke about in asking the government, and the government listened on this occasion and said, please get the tribunal to come back and make recommendations to the local governments. And the recommendations have been taken at full strength by other councils. And that's what it is. It's not nothing new. It's something that the councils have been screaming out across New South Wales for years and years to happen. And other councils have already voted on this and said, yes, we'll take the top rung. Now, I can go into detail about the reasons why that should happen, but I won't until the debate occurs.
A point of order, Mr. Chair. Councillor Nugent, are we debating the amendment at the moment, or
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a direction from our CEO that the item was being withdrawn.
Yep, and he's
so it's not actually technically in the papers, even though it appears in the papers.
I was of the opinion that we were actually voting on whether it be included.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Now, Councillor McRae, you were next to speak.
Thank you, Mr.
There is no point of order. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I think my concern is, and I note that many in our community are going through a tough time, and it's never good when politicians give themselves a pay rise when other members of the community are struggling. So I think it's a very awkward situation that we are approving a budget, but we're also including our own pay rise. Very uncomfortable about that. As I said, many in our community are currently struggling, although as reported in local media, not as much as many other areas. I disagree that because other councils have done it, therefore we should. We are a council who stands alone and should be able to make our own decisions. So Councillor Duffy's statement, I would refute that just because everybody else does must mean it's nothing to do. I would also suggest that there could be consideration that any increase we do take could come into effect from the next council. And that would perhaps be a way to particularly ensure that there is more recovery.
Councillor McRae,
that would be something to consider.
Councillor
But I don't
McRae, just interrupt you. We're not debating whether we should get the pay
We're
rise.
debating whether it goes into
We're
the
debating
item.
whether this point comes back into this meeting, okay? So if we could just stick to whether this item is coming back for resolution or not. We're not debating whether we get a pay rise or not. So, okay, any further speakers for or against?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I knew this was going to happen with the debate like this. We're not talking about pay rises and that. This is just throwing into the media's hands, the emotion, the emotive, and people are doing it hard and everything. This is a tribunal thing. My point is that a tribunal is set up to look at councils. This shouldn't even be a debate because I'm going to stick quite strongly to it. If you discuss it in here, you are showing a conflict of interest because it is a pecuniary conflict of interest that you have.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree. I agree with that. If I may, Councillor Whitten.
Certainly, Councillor Romano.
Yeah, I had my hand up before all this debate or discussion started. I actually think that Councillor Kidd's correct in saying that it is a conflict of interest, and I'm not comfortable voting for or against any of this. It's come down from the tribunal, so why are we even talking about it?
Yeah. Any
So I won't
further
be voting on
speakers? Councillor Miletto, sorry, you're on the left.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm of a similar point of view. I'm not comfortable with anybody not voting. I think if we were all required to vote, if there's a motion, then we all should be required to vote, not declare a conflict of interest. If there's a conflict of interest for one, it should be for all. That is my view.
Yeah, under the code of practices, councillors are able to determine their own risk and exposure. So we are not able to advise whether a councillor does or does not choose to stay in or leave a meeting. Councillor Nugent.
Yeah, just a question, Mr. Chair. So if we, and I think we're still discussing whether it gets included or not tonight, if we don't include it tonight, what is the process? And I've heard other councillors saying they're not comfortable, debating or discussing our own remuneration. What is the process from here that we would go through you, Mr. Chair, to the CEO?
So Councillor Nugent, the whole reason that the CEO discussed with me this afternoon was, which I agree with wholeheartedly, was the fact that this item was never in any of our briefings, right? So it only turned up on Friday with our papers because the tribunal had brought out the new the fee structure. So it was suggested by the CEO to be fair and to give the councillors the opportunity to be briefed on the matter, so that councillors could then decide a way forward. That would be the better way to move, right? Because as certain councillors have indicated, they are not comfortable in determining their own fee structure because they feel that it is exposing them to a pecuniary interest, and that is entirely their right to do that. Mr. CEO, you had your hand up.
I was just saying, yeah, so if councillors would vote on whether to accept my offer to withdraw it, that would be good. If you don't, then I would suggest to avoid mass declarations. Then what's that term? In seriatim be applied to the 5.
Yeah.
Can I just make a comment there? The comment by the general manager there is borders on, as far as I'm concerned, appears to be scaremongering. Other councils throughout New South Wales have already voted on this, so therefore there's going to be the code of conduct system is going to be flooded with anything and everything. It's just ludicrous. As you've said, Mr. Chairman, we're allowed to vote on these things, so let's get on with the vote.
Certainly, Councillor Duffy, but Councillor Hamling has had his hand up, so I'm going to give him the courtesy to speak.
So, Mr. Mayor, if this does not go through, does it come back for us to vote on at another meeting, or
it's certainly Councillor Hamling. So the whole mechanism is that the CEO would like the opportunity to brief councillors on the decision of tribunal, rather than just going through tonight in the budget.
So at the end of the day, we still will be making a decision on this.
Of course, yeah, but we haven't. To be frank, we haven't had the information in front of us to make an informed. Thank you, Councillor Kidd. An informed decision, right? So, if there's no other speakers, I'm going to speak against the amendment because I think, out of the courtesy of a number of councillors and to the CEO and the staff, we need the opportunity to be briefed on it. I do understand what you're saying, Councillor Duffy.
Mr. Chairman, with the permission of the seconder, I'll withdraw the amendment.
Yeah,
Absolutely pathetic.
All righty. So we will move forward because the amendment's now been withdrawn.
Oh, wagging the dog.
Recommendations as printed without point 5 on page 13.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
It's been moved.
second,
Councillor
Mr.
Hamling.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question.
Certainly, Councillor Taylor. So I'll just for the record, Councillor Hamling moved it and you seconded it, Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question before you put it to the vote.
Certainly.
No, it's not too late. It's actually it hasn't been voted on as yet. The chairman hasn't put the motion. Mr. Chairman, on Friday we had a briefing on changes to the budget. I raised a point about Perry Oval. Perry Oval was a very significant sporting ground in Orange, and it really has fallen into disrepair. The issue's been raised with myself and the mayor. We've both been up there. We've had a good look around it, and we really think it is an asset that we should be utilising. It could be used for junior sport. It could become a home ground for a sporting club. It's got many hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of lights up there. It's got an amenity shed which would need a little bit of money spent on it, a coat of paint, replace the windows, probably have a look at the toilets, the maintenance and so forth there. The ground itself, it's overgrown at the moment with capeweed, and the ground itself and the surface really does need some tender loving care. I know that one of the directors indicated there was no irrigation system there, but I know that oval very, very well, and it did have irrigation in there many years ago, as it did have a cricket pitch. And the oval was top dressed a few years ago, and I believe that maybe the cricket pitch could still be there and irrigation could be there. But I did ask for a succinct allocation on Friday before we came here tonight. Given the fact that the papers that we received on Friday and these are not updated, I would ask the staff if they could answer the question for me. Is there an allocation for Perry Oval there, and what is that amount?
The CEO.
Yeah, so as we discussed on Friday, the papers that came out were the papers that you're considering tonight. So there is not a succinct Perry Oval allocation in there. Should you want an allocation, councillor, then it would be up to you to sort of make a change to that.
I'll ask it. I'd be allowed, Mr. Chairman, if I'm given leave to move that way, that there be an allocation. This is where I'm not too happy about this, Mr. Chairman, because on Friday staff were told what I would like to see. I mean, there was a number of councillors that supported it, and I said at the time I wasn't sure on the amount that would be needed. I'm not sure whether we need $10,000 or we need $50,000. If the ground has to be redressed and reseeded or whatever it may be, it could be a lot of money. It could be $50,000. So, look, me moving a ballpark figure here tonight is probably not totally satisfactory. Surely can I have some guidance on how much we'd probably need? And this was raised on Friday. I did do it correctly. I did follow all protocols. And we're no further ahead, so I must have fell on deaf ears.
Mr. Vidal, what is your guidance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it didn't fall on deaf ears, councillor. If I had to pick a number now in consultation with the director, we're talking a minimum of $50,000 as a one-off allocation, or as the start probably of an allocation. We thought perhaps we could do some sort of audit on Perry Oval on all of these matters, irrigation, lighting, and start off with a very good clean-up. And come back to council, perhaps as a quarterly review, perhaps in a report in a couple of meetings, and give you more guidance on what we think we can do to bring it up to your standard. So you have two choices. You could accept that method and you will get a mow, a weed and a good clean-up and an audit of those facilities, and we will come back to you shortly. Or you can put an allocation in this evening?
Well, Mr. Chairman, given the fact that we have another item up, I think, later tonight, which is a significant amount of money which has been brought up as a late item, I mean, I can't see where, and there was no mention of those particular items, no matter how well-meaning they are or how they are embraced by council. I find it extraordinary that now I have to do this blindly without any guidance as far as how much we would need. I will move, Mr. Chairman, if I could get support of councillors, an allocation of $50,000.
I'll second that.
How much?
50K.
I'm happy to.
I'll
So,
second.
thank you, Councillor Kidd. So what I might do, what I
Point
might
of order.
process, just one moment, Councillor Manoletta. Councillor Hamling, you were the mover of the overall motion. Are you happy to accept that you add that 50,000 into the motion that you
For debate.
So you're going to add, so Councillor Kidd, you're happy with that? We're going to just put it into the original motion that Councillor Hamling has moved and Councillor Taylor has seconded.
Happy with that.
Yeah. Councillor Manoletta, you had a point of order?
Oh, I was just interested to know what happened to the motion which Councillor Duffy had to withdraw. We were going to vote on. We've gone off and
He withdrew his amendment.
He withdrew because there's too many gutless councillors.
Yeah.
I'll retract that.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy.
Thank
So
you.
we have a motion in front of us now, as printed with point 5 removed, and we're adding Perry Oval into that motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Duffy.
Yes, I want to make comment, and my comment, and it's been brought up with the staff a number of times, the bats in Cook Park. Now, I'm not about eradicating them or murdering them or slaughtering them or whatever the case may be, but I do believe that councils, and one being Albury Council, remove their bats from their main park down there by using the noise method of bans and things like that. And I also believe that Cairns councils are looking into special lighting to get rid of them. And I've also been told that by staff at the Orange Hospital who've been in the park up there when there's been music played, that the bats have disappeared with the noise. And I cannot believe, and I think the whole city of Orange want the bats to move out. They don't want to kill them. They just want them to move out. And I cannot see why we haven't got an allocation for some attempt to move the bats from there. I don't want to see signs up there saying they're pretty little things. They've been involved in every virus and pandemic that we know of. So they're not real friendly little things, but let's just try and move them out of our park. And I'll send you all some things of what they actually do in the daytime while they sit up there. But anyway, I'd like to see us allocate $25,000 at least to get some noise there, whether it be a chopper flying over there as they're coming in, whatever the case may be. At least make some attempt to do it. And I just can't believe it's been ignored. And it's one of our most iconic parks in Australia.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. I think the CEO was going to have his hand up there.
Oh, no, it's okay, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nugent, believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, look, I had a couple of questions, I suppose, about the process here. So we're not actually debating the $50,000 for Perry Oval. We only have a choice now of voting for the whole budget with the $50,000 for Perry Oval in, or not voting for the budget. Is that the case? I'm not sure that that's really great process, given that this budget's been developed over a very long period of time. And personally, I think dealing with it as part of a quarterly budget review makes a lot of sense to me, as per Mr. Waddell's comments earlier. And just to finish off, I personally don't want to get rid of the bats. In response to Councillor Duffy, I actually have walked through Cook Park in the morning and at night every day, every workday for the last 3 months, and have actually haven't been bothered by the bats at all.
Councillor Romano, sorry.
No.
Oh, you didn't have your hand up?
No.
Councillor Manoletta?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just with regards to the $25,000 that Councillor Duffy is suggesting, I'm assuming that would have to be found elsewhere and it's not included at the budget at the present time.
Same place. as
Waddell,
50,000.
sorry, David Waddell.
Yeah.
Sorry, CEO,
Um,
Mr. Waddell.
So just from a process point of view, Chair, just to answer a couple of questions there. We dropped recommendation number 5, thank you. We now have the permission of the mover and seconder to include Perry Oval as item 5, if I'm not mistaken, to the tune of $50,000. Councillor Duffy is proposing a number 6 be included, which might be $25,000 for bat treatment or removal. So that's what we're doing at the moment. Then I would propose later, as you said, Chair, you'll do them in seriatim and debate them as you go, whether you actually...
Well, I think at the moment we're just going to move the whole lot as there is no $25 because I don't think anybody seconded that.
So you need to decide whether there is an item 6 on bats first.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just make a comment in my defence after Councillor Nugent has just enlightened us. The fact of the matter is I raised this on Friday at a briefing. Councillor Nugent was at that meeting. He did attend it. Now, I took the advice tonight of the CEO, and the CEO said that I was entitled to move that we allocate funds to Perry Oval. And I did indicate that I didn't have the information of exactly how much. So that is how we came about to the $50,000. And I'm led to believe I followed all the protocols tonight. I followed the advice of the CEO, and if Councillor Nugent has a problem with that, well, so be it. But I followed the advice of the CEO.
All righty. I'm now going to put the motion as printed. We've all had a...
Sorry, point of order.
Yeah, what are you putting of order for, Councillor Nugent?
Are you putting the whole thing as one block?
Well, I haven't had no other direction to do otherwise, Councillor Nugent. Unless
it has been suggested that we deal with it in seriatim, item by item.
Yes, and the CEO doesn't get a vote, mate. Only you councillors do. So no one has put up a motion to do
move the
that.
motion be put.
So I'm going to put the motion because we don't have any amendments. So
can we still ask? Can we ask questions about the budget?
You can ask a question, Councillor Nugent, but I believe there's no speakers for or against. So I'm going to put the motion.
So when do we get to ask questions, Mr. Chair?
You can ask a question. What would you like to ask, Councillor Nugent?
I had some questions I wanted to ask about some of the submissions that were made, if I could.
You could do that as a matter arising if it's not going to affect the outcome of the motion. Then you can ask them as a matter arising.
Well, they're material to the nature of the budget.
I move the motion be put, Mr. Chairman.
So
I'd like to hear Councillor Nugent.
I'll second that.
So we have a mover that the motion be put. We have a seconder.
Second it.
All those in favour that the motion be put, please raise your hand. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against. We have 1, 2, 3 against. So the motion is to put the motion has succeeded.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. What happened? That wasn't. Not everyone voted, I don't think.
I don't think everyone voted.
Well, I thought you said 5 and 3. That's 8 by my count.
Well, who didn't vote?
Who didn't vote?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether the mayor voted. Did Councillor Privatera vote?
Put it to the vote again.
All righty.
Do the count again, Mr.
I've lost Councillor Kidd's screen.
Councillor Kidd's screen is not there. Who else is not there? 3, 5, 10. Yeah, so only Councillor Kidd is not visible to you.
Correct. So I can't count his vote.
So there's 10 councillors in present at the moment.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All righty. I'll put the motion again. To put the motion. Hands up, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yep. Against.
1, 2, 3. Councillor Privatera, your vote.
Councillor Privatera, I don't think we've seen your vote. I don't think we see your hand. Are you
Voted
voting?
voted to negative.
Beg your pardon?
I voted for the motion.
Oh, you voted for the motion. There you go, Mr. Waddell. Yeah. So are you happy with that? Could you clarify if the motion has been successful, Mr. Waddell?
Yeah, I think the numbers say that the majority want the motion put. That includes the new item 5 and the new item 6.
What's item 6?
Well, that's the other thing. Has Councillor Duffy's proposal to include money for the bats been actually included?
Point of order.
So I'm going to put the motion.
Point of order, please.
What's the point
Just
of
a
order?
clarification.
What's the point of order?
I'm a little bit confused. Are you saying that if we now vote, that we have no say in these 2 new items that have just been thrown in?
Well, nobody's moved any amendments, Councillor Maletta. You're in
Because he wasn't allowed to speak. Councillor Nugent wasn't allowed to speak. That's why. It's my mistake.
He was asking, his question was that it was suggested that we deal with them one at a time, but nobody moved the motion to do that. In a council meeting, councillors move motions to do things. They don't suggest things. So they move a motion, then the other councillors either agree with them or they don't agree with them. Now, nobody moved no motion to deal with any items one by one.
Well, I didn't have the chance, Mr. Chair, because Councillor Duffy moved his motion.
Councillor Nugent, you have every chance to move amendments and motions. You have not done so. You've asked questions. Now, the only motion I have received from any councillor has been to move the recommendations as they are with item 5 removed. Then we had Councillor Taylor add in his $50,000 for Perry Oval. The mover of the original motion accepted that into that motion, which still stands. So I'm now going to put the motion for this budget. All those in favour of the motion as been put, please raise your hand so that the CEO can count. So we are putting the motion that the budget be accepted. All those in favour, raise your hand. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 councillors in favour. No councillors against.
Mr. Chair, am I back in there?
You're back in there, Mr. Councillor.
Thank you. Jesus. Thank you.
I'm not.
Now that we're.
Now, the budget has been accepted. We're now going to move on to the closed item.
Mr. Chair, can I, as a matter arising then, ask a question, as I wasn't able to ask the question in the meeting?
Well, you were able to ask questions in the meeting, Councillor Nugent, but another councillor moved that it be put. So you may raise a question as a matter arising.
There's a couple of things, I suppose. Just picking up on what the speakers tonight in the open forum were talking about. Dr. Kinross talked about the environmental flows. Can we have, and also the amount of water that's likely to be captured by Blackman's Swamp stormwater harvesting stage 2 is, and Dr. Kinross indicated that information didn't seem to be available. So through you, Mr. Chair, can I just check, do we have modelling on that, how much water we're expecting to capture through stage 2? I think the stormwater harvesting scheme is a good thing, and it's to be debated about whether it's better to capture the water here rather than sort of pumping it up from Macquarie River. And I think we're well aware that we need to probably do both of those things to some extent, but it's all about keeping that balance. So, but just in terms of what information is available in the public forum, through you, Mr. Chair, can I ask?
Mr. Greenham, I see you appear, so you must want to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you, if I may. And I'll just rephrase the question, if I may, Councillor Nugent, and if I've got it wrong, you can correct me. So I guess the broad question is, how the system broadly will work, if I may answer that. And to answer that, it's...
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nugent. To answer how it will broadly work is we'll only ever be harvesting the peak out of a storm. And stage 2 allows through an out branch along the Blackman Swamp Creek into a wetland area to store water and then release water under a controlled mechanism back into that same creek. So that takes out the big peak in flows, water flows. What that allows us to do is to have flows at where we have our pump station at Blackman Stage 1. It allows flows to be high enough to keep those pumps running for a longer period of time. Whenever we do have those pumps on, there is still a base flow of stormwater and generally a significant base flow of stormwater still flowing past those pumps. So yes, we are taking more water out of the system through this stage 2. There's been some broad numbers written into this, into our water plans. Our integrated water cycle management plan has this listed as one of the priority projects, and it has some modelling already in place, or estimated modelling on how much water that would generate. I'll have to take it on notice to actually circulate that amongst the councillors. I'd be happy to do so. But the final modelling and the final detailed design is still being developed. And is probably why we still haven't gone back to that reference group. We have gone out to the community to discuss the overall concept, and we have had some meetings with environmental groups and community groups about what the wetlands might actually include. The whole scheme is that we take some water out of those peak flows by channeling them into the wetland and then slowly release them under a controlled mechanism back into the creek system. And that allows our pumps to pump for longer.
And I suppose the follow-up question then is, when that modelling data is available, will that be publicly available information at the appropriate time?
At the appropriate time, it'll certainly be public information. It'll form part of the management plan and also the business case report that we need to submit for that system. It will certainly be part of the REF as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Rising.
I had another question, but I'm happy if Councillor Munro wants to go next, if I can come back to after Councillor Munro.
You go again. Get out of your system. We'll do Councillor Munro in a moment.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, the other one was in relation to the issue of mountain biking on Mount Canobolas, as addressed by Mr. King. And there was an article in the paper over the weekend quoting Dr. Cole Bauer about, his concerns about whether the proposal is ever actually going to sort of be able to achieve approval after the environmental impact statements are done. So I suppose I was going to ask, is there a chance that, we might spend this $500,000 and that project may never actually come to fruition? And I suppose as a second part of that, if we're spending this $500,000, is there a possibility that the environmental impact statement might indicate that we need to move the mountain bike trail more out of the state conservation area and more into the state forest area, and that there might be more of the mountain bike trail in that state forest area rather than the state conservation area? Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Waddell, would you?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, anything is possible. Council needs to have confidence that because the Minister of the Environment changed the plan of management for Mount Canobolas, the door has been open to mountain biking. What is before us now is to do the body of the work that proves that a mountain bike trail series can be done without significant environmental impact. And that process will see environmental consultants working with trail designers to make sure they put those designs, put those trails in the appropriate parts of the mountain. That's all I can say for now, because that body of work, now that you've approved the budget, is before us.
Okay, thank you. And that body of work sounds like it's a lengthy body of work. So that environmental impact assessment will not just look at the trails that were designed by World Expeditions, but will look at all sort of options.
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. The idea is to avoid with this project, not cause impact.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Munro, you had a question, then we'll move on to close.
Yeah, thank you. Just question through you to the General Manager in regards to the fees and charges, how we should I put a motion to suspend those for 12 months in regard to building activity, road access, permits and such. I spoke to David about this, but I would like some clarification on how we would go about suspending those for 12 months to give everyone a fair go in regards to the building industry in Orange and promote some activity and some goodwill with the building industry in Orange. Should I?
Liddell's got his hand up to answer you now, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think Councillor Munro, in voting for the budget, you've accepted those fees and charges. What I suggest you do is now, having missed tonight's opportunity, is to talk to me during the week about a notice of motion to bring to council at the appropriate time for such a matter.
Well, I'll foresee a matter for the next meeting, and if that's the case.
I don't think we'll make the next meeting, but the one after.
Righto. Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
All righty. We'll now move in.
Can I, Mr. Chair?
Sorry, Councillor Kidd.
Look, I'd just like to make a comment, if I may, and a question to the General Manager. Overall, with the budget, it says that the budget as it stands at the moment does look at a slight deficit. But don't forget that they can go the other way very, very quickly with grants, and also the decision that we've already made, which will be coming back in the form of a report to council about a lot of dead assets that we have sitting out there at the moment, selling them, which completely can change this budget around quite dramatically into a very, very positive black budget, with even the sale of 2 or 3 of the dead assets that we've got sitting out there. So I think I'd like to make that, because the public are watching tonight and listening, and the media, to pick that up. It always can sound quite negative, and we have had a whole host of reasons looking at a tighter budget, but I also want to make it quite clear as a council we've made the decision, and staff have been going through looking at properties and a whole range of things that we actually own that are sitting there that are not of use, that we could actually sell and put that funding into enhancement of assets that we actually have, whether that be roads, footpaths, parks and gardens, street trees, or whatever it may be.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy, you want to ask a question? You're on mute. You're still on mute, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Duffy, you're on mute. Can we take him off mute?
I've asked him to unmute, but
we can't hear you. There you go. It was a blissful thing, Councillor Duffy.
We missed the joke, Kev.
We missed it.
Yeah, it was a good joke too. You'd love it.
Out of courtesy, we're going to let you.
I just want to back up the mayor what he just said there. There's a few projects that we got going, but one of the ones that I hope the Director of Technical Services listening is stage 4 of the Southern Feeder Road. I think with the mayor going down there and shaking the living daylights out of Minister Toole, we should be able to get a bit of money so that can start happening as soon as possible as well. So instead of giving all his money to Bathurst, it just falls out of him down there.
Thank you.
Look, I think we're doing pretty well, actually. I'm asking for a report to come back at the end of July on, through the period of time of this council, on what grants we have got from both the state and the federal. It's quite interesting sometimes to hear that we haven't got this and we haven't got that. People forget very, very quickly what we have got.
Stop sticking up for him.
Councillor Taylor, then we'll move.
I understand, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to push my luck, but just backing Councillor Duffy up on that comment. The other day I was there, I think yesterday, and really the loggerhead of traffic up in Anson Street around school time, both in the morning and afternoon. That stage 4 between, say, Anson Street and Woodward Street really is imperative because it would relieve that. And that should be one of the main drivers why we go ahead and try and get ahead with that stage 4. I understand what the Mayor's saying. We're pushing a lot of them. But I've always said it, Dairy Creek Road is already there and it's serviced Leewood and the city very well over the years. I would like us to be building the new road, but of course it does depend on funding, and we're still trying to ascertain that funding.
Rightio. Thank you. All right, we'll move into closed. I'm going to read, the CER's kindly sent me the spiel. I have to read it off my phone because it's not in the paper. The Chief Executive Officer will advise the Council if any written submissions have been received relating to any item advertised for consideration by closed meeting of Council in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993, the Local Government Regulation 2005 of the General Manager, the following business of a kind as referred in Section 10A2 of the Act and should be dealt with within confidential session of Council meeting closed to the press and the public. The recommendation is the Council adjourn into closed meeting and the members of the press and the public be excluded from the closed meeting, and access to correspondence and reports relating to the item considered during the course of the meeting be withheld unless declassified by a separate resolution. Do we have any submissions, Mr. General Manager? Sorry, Mr. CEO.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we have no submissions. I'll just ask Ms. Constantine to let us know when we are in close. Thank you, sir.